Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this Free Training Friday. My name is Kaylee White. I am a marketing coordinator here at Abacus Next, and today we have Philip Ferris, who's going to talk about some tips and tricks to use inside of OfficeTools. This will be about a 30-minute webinar. Towards the end, during the remaining 10 minutes, we will take your questions. So don't be shy. Go ahead and type those into the questions section in the control panel. And without further ado, I'm going to let Philip take over. Hey, Philip.
Good afternoon, Kaylee. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for taking some time out of your day to join me. As Kaylee mentioned, this particular webinar is about tips and tricks, which is one of my favorite topics. It's a lot of fun, and whether you're an experienced OfficeTools user or you're brand new to it, then there's something that you're going to get out of this webinar, and that's why I think it's so much fun, is because these are the areas of the program that we don't come across every day. They're not so critical to running our firms that we have to have them so that we are exposed to them. These are those little offline kind of features and functions, but you know what? A lot of these will do a lot for you on a day-to-day basis, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. If you have questions, as Kaylee mentioned, please type those in, and I will do my best at the end to make sure that I answer those. If I can't get to your questions, don't fret. I'll do a follow-up after the webinar and get back to you as quick as I can with some replies to those. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to talk about today is a couple things. One of them, and this is applicable across the application, is right-clicking. In OfficeTools, we've strived very hard to make sense of a lot of data and a lot of different display formats. And one thing that we've had to do is kind of hide a lot of options under the right-click menus. And they're not always obvious that they're there because, again, they tend to be those extra features. So we're gonna talk about some really cool right-click options. I'm going to talk a little bit about document management in really kind of two areas. One, as far as the add-ins for a couple products that we integrate with. And we're going to talk about document shortcuts and file name conventions. We're going to touch time cards and timers a little bit. And then obviously I want to talk about contacts and a couple other things as we go. And again, as I mentioned, this webinar is kind of all over the place, right? This is tips and tricks. And we're going to try to cover as many as we can in the time that we have allotted, which will be about 20 or so minutes to wrap up our half an hour. So I want to leave some time in there, obviously, for the Q&A period. So that being said, without further ado, let's not waste any more time, and let's jump right in to OfficeTools. So we are all familiar with this screen. Right, this is what we look at hopefully every single day, and right out of the gate there's a couple areas here that you may not be familiar with. So I'm actually going to start with right clicks. Now, right clicking again spans the whole program in different areas, but here's a kind of a general rule when you're thinking about OfficeTools and right click menus. Is anywhere that you see a grid, just like the activity list here on the bottom, or over in the billing tab, things like that, there's probably going to be a right click menu. And that applies here. So for example, I can come down to my activity list here on the bottom, and yes, I can check off the box over here and complete it, or I can simply right-click on the item, and it'll give me an entire sub-menu of things that I'm able to do. Now, some things that you'll want to do here, if you're not familiar with this screen, is, for example, track time without actually completing your task. Right? You want a time card, or you want to run a timer even, but you're not done with the work, so you don't want to check it off, you just want to track your time. So this makes it very quick and easy to create those time cards or start a timer. And what you can also do, and don't tell your boss about this necessarily, is you can complete tasks without creating a time card. So if you are, for example, running timers or entering it in manually, and you want to get this off your list, but you don't want that time card to pop up, you can actually do that from right here. But my favorite option in this submenu is actually this one right here, reassign staff. So as a manager and as a director, if there's something on my list and I want to delegate that work, you know what I do? I right-click on it, I choose reassign, and I give that to somebody else. Very quick, very easy. Or if I'm doing the proper maintaining of my activity list, and I see an item on here that I missed that perhaps was due yesterday, and I want to go ahead and push that due date out a day or so, that way it's no longer red, I can change the date here also. And that's very simple, very quick menu. Simply right-click on an item, and you have a bunch of stuff here, but those are kind of the go-to items. So there's some more right-click things that we can do right here on the contacts page too, that a lot of people may not be aware of. For example, under the address field, where it actually says the word address, you may notice, and if it's too small on your screen, I apologize, but you may notice that the mouse cursor actually turns into a little hand. So what you're able to do is actually right-click on that, and it'll give you an option to copy that address to the clipboard, and you can paste it in another application if you need to. You can have the program actually speak the address back to you, but what I think is great is that you can have it embed a map directly from MapQuest, Yahoo, or Google. You can do that right from the Contacts tab just by clicking on and right-clicking on the address field here. It'll go ahead and embed the map, and you can click on it and get directions. You can also actually do that with the phone numbers. So you can click on the phone number names here, like work, home, fax, mobile, etc., and have a list where it'll show large text, which is great for us older folks. All right, and you can set that as the display phone. So this is more serious right here. Throughout the application, throughout OfficeTools, there's various places where a phone number is going to be displayed. One example is that you can see over here on the contact card that we have Mike Smith as the owner of ABC Company, and we see the phone number referenced right here. That way I have access to that no matter where I happen to be in the application. But perhaps Mike says, I want to use a different number. Don't call me at the 818 number, call me at the 323 number. Well, it's as simple as going to that number, clicking on it, and setting that as a display phone. It'll go ahead and update that in just a moment, and now that will be displayed throughout the application as the main contact's phone number. So that's a really, really handy option if you want to change what the default, or what we refer to as the displayed phone number, is throughout the system. Okay, so the right click is really important, and there's some other places where that's applicable. If we go over to the Schedule tab, all right, I'll go ahead and go to Day View here, and if you right click on an appointment, although I don't have any on the screen right now, you can see that you have a whole new submenu of things that you're able to do, including adding an appointment very quickly on the fly, editing, deleting, you can create meeting requests, send and text email reminders, create time cards, etc. And that's all found within the right-click menu of an appointment. And the last area that I'm going to pull up as far as right-clicking is actually over in the billing section. So if you're a biller, this can come in very, very handy. You can select time and invoices, and there's right-click menus there. So, for example, if I go to my WIP screen, my billable time screen here, I can actually select one or multiple time entries. For example, this tax return time. I can highlight that with the mouse, right-click, and then apply whatever kind of change I want across all of, in this example, these 4 time entries by using the right-click menu. I can mark them up and make adjustments. I can change the rate. I can invoice them all. I can even reassign WIP and change that over to a different contact. So some really cool things you can do with the right-click menus. Okay, so now I'm going to transition over a little bit and talk about time. What are some tips and tricks when it comes to time? Well, a lot of people may be aware of this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because it does get missed quite often, is that you can actually change the visible fields on your timesheet. Okay, so I'm under the Time tab, and I'm looking at, in this case, Joe Demo's timesheet, and I can see that I have, the client name and the project and the work code. But for example, let's say I want to add the date. I can see it on the calendar, but I'd really like to have the date in the actual fields down here on the bottom. So what you can do is you can navigate up to the toolbar, and right up here on these small gears, this button up here, you'll see Timesheet Settings. And in here you can do a couple things, including showing additional columns, dates, account numbers. If you're account number kind of centric when it comes to your contacts, maybe that would work better for you. If you prefer to have or not have start and end times versus quantity, you can go ahead and do that. So this is a great way of making the timesheet a little bit more customizable, and everybody can do this independently, meaning everybody can have their own version of this. Now, if you're a timesheet manager, you can actually apply a standard one across everybody's by using the Set for All Staff. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about timers. And this is not so much a tip or a trick necessarily, it's more of just a process that some people do get confused about. So you can run timers obviously inside of OfficeTools, and the easiest way to do that is to simply click on the clock that you find on the toolbar in every tab. But here's maybe the tip to keep in mind, is when you run that timer from a specific tab, what you're saying is that you want to track time for the tab and task that you have displayed. So what I mean by that is if I come over to the Calls tab, and I have a phone call on the screen here, and I click the timer, OfficeTools is going to assume that this timer is for the client and the task that I have displayed. So I will not be able to change those items. And that is true for to-dos, calls, schedule, projects, etc. If I go to the Projects tab and I want to run a timer, great, I can click on the timer right here. It'll give me a timer, but you notice that the contact, project, and code are all grayed out. I can't change those. And again, the reason is because I generated the timer from the specific event for the specific client. But you know what? You do get 2 freebies. If you want a timer that you can modify and change that is not tied to any specific event, well, you're going to want to go back to the time sheet, the time tab, and run a timer from here. Okay, so you can see here that I can change that to a different contact if I choose. Or, let me close out of that guy, you can go to the Contact tab and run a timer from there. Both of those are basically freebies. They're not tied to a specific event. They will be defaulted with the client at hand, but they're not necessarily stuck that way. You can flip that around and make some changes. Some other things you can do is run a timer, run multiple timers. And there's a setting here that I want to bring up as far as the tip that may make it work a little differently for you depending on your needs. So for example, I'm running a timer. I'm going to go ahead and just set that over here for just a moment. And I'm going to go back over to my timesheet, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the timer again. Or I can go over to projects or whatever it may be. Okay. So what you'll end up getting is, move these out of the way, is another timer. And when you're able to, what you're able to do then is toggle between timers and either have them running at the same time or have them switch on and off. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and get that second timer going. Let me go to a different contact, pull up that second timer, and now we can see those right next to each other. Now you'll notice they're both going at the same time. Now, we all know a good example of where this would come up, right, when we're on the phone with the IRS. That's one good example. There's a lot of reasons why we might want 2 timers running at the same time. However, there is an option here that allows you to do something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just turn one of these off real quick. And I'm going to go up to the Setup menu, My Company, Information and Settings, and then I'm going to go down over here to Payroll and Time. Now, you may have to have certain level of access to do this, and it is a global option. But in the Time area here, under Other Settings, there's an option that says Pause Running Timers when starting a new timer. Go ahead and turn that puppy on. Now, I know that's a small thing that's kind of buried in there, but here's what you end up with. I'm going to go ahead and create that second timer again. Let me just get another client here. So now notice I have one timer running for one client and another timer paused for a different one. As soon as I start my second timer, it'll go ahead and pause that first one for me. Now, that does require OfficeTools to be reset or restarted, but what that allows you to do is very quickly toggle back and forth between a set of timers. And if you want to get creative, you can have a third or fourth or fifth timer. And what I see a lot of offices do is they set up a timer based on codes. So they'll have an admin timer, they'll have a tax timer, they'll have a accounting timer, and they simply change the contacts out and start those timers up when they begin that type of work. So that's a little trick on timers that can make those a little bit more powerful by having that option to either have them run at the same time or toggle back and forth if needed. Okay, so now we're going to transition over to documents. There's a lot of things here that I want to try to cover when it comes to documents. If you're using document management, then you've probably already got the basics down. You drag and drop a document in. Maybe you're using the drop folder. All those options are fantastic, but what I want to make sure that you do have is that you've installed the add-ins. Now, this is per workstation, so this would be important for every workstation that uses OfficeTools. If you go to the Documents tab, under the Install button right here on the toolbar, there are 3 add-ins that are very, very important. 2 of them are very important. The third one's, here nor there. The Adobe Acrobat add-in is the here nor there. If you use Adobe a lot and you're working a lot with PDFs and you want to get those into OfficeTools as quick as possible, then you might want to install this add-in. And what it does is just that. It puts a little tool basically in your Adobe application that allows you to click on and import that document directly into document management inside of OfficeTools. So that one's kind of cool. The have-to-haves, at least in my opinion, are the PDF print driver, which is just that. It allows you to print from any application, really, directly into OfficeTools document management, and the Microsoft Office add-in. And this does something very similar to the Adobe add-in, where it actually embeds an add-in into the Excel, Word, and Outlook, and allows you from within those applications to take whatever document you happen to be working on and queue that document to be imported into OfficeTools. So if you haven't installed your add-ins, please do so. They're very, very helpful. And again, this will require you to restart OfficeTools for those to kick in and restart the applications that you're installing the add-on on. But once all that's done, they're very, very convenient. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick inside of documents is the file naming conventions. This is another area that isn't frequently used, but there's a lot of value here and a lot of powerful things that you can do with it. And that is the ability to use merge fields to give documents names based on various criteria. There's two parts here. One is actually using it, and the other one is setting it up. So I'm going to start with what it actually looks like. So I have a document here that is in document management. It's just simply called new text document. I didn't give it a name. Perhaps it came from my scanner, and I want to change the name. We have a very specific naming convention that we use here, and I want this to be applied to this document. So when that document is first imported, or after the fact, I can actually click on the details here by right-clicking. Here's another right-click that we forgot about earlier. I can right-click on the document, go to Details, and if you've imported documents into OfficeTools before, then this screen right here will look very familiar. What I want to pull your attention to, however, is the File Names field. So inside here, you can see the list of all of the file naming conventions that I've already created. I have some for my bookkeeping and accounting work. I got stuff for tax returns. I even have source documents, power of attorney, etc., etc. And then the actual fields that I want to name the document with. So this particular document is for the monthly stuff that I do, so I'm going to go ahead and just choose payroll processing, and it will go ahead and create, right down here, the name of the document based on my merge fields, on the fields that I've selected. Whether it's the client name, the project, date. That way I don't have to rename the document manually, because what happens is everyone kind of has their own version, right? You might call a document 1040 and I'll call it individual and so on and so forth. So this puts a very clear description of a file name on a document. So that's how you use it, and I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. But here's how you set it up. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. Notice my document has a new name now. Looks much better. So to set up your file names, what you want to do is go to the Set It menu here at the top, go to Documents, and actually go to File Names. Okay, so here's the file names that we saw in that list just a moment ago, and obviously you can modify or delete what's here, or simply hit Add to create a new one. Give it a name, and then here's the menu of merge fields that are available to you, and you can build these out however you want. Once you add them, so for example, I might want something that has the project name, and then the company, and perhaps even the actual original file name. Makes it very handy and very convenient to start naming files and have a uniform way of doing that. Okay, the last thing about documents before we move on is the fact that the document screen here supports obviously Word documents and PDFs and emails, but you can actually also bring other types of files in here, such as executable files. So if you have a particular year or version of QuickBooks, as an example, that you use for a client, and you don't want to have to remember or look at the company file or do any of that, you can actually just make a shortcut to that version of QuickBooks or that version of the tax software or whatever it may be, and put that in here. That way, when you go to ABC Company and you want to open up their company file, you just click on that version of QuickBooks or that link that's in here, and it will open up QuickBooks accordingly. Or you can actually input and add shortcuts to other file locations. So let's say hypothetically you have a file structure that is not part of OfficeTools, that is not connected to OfficeTools. You can very quickly, like an archive as an example, you can very quickly make a shortcut to that folder and import that shortcut. So that way, instead of having to add documents into OfficeTools necessarily, you're just adding a shortcut to either a program or another folder location. Makes it very handy to get around quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to move off to kind of the last area I'm going to talk about here real quick, and then I want to open things up for some Q&A. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them. So if you haven't put any questions in the question area, now is a great time to start thinking of those and putting those in. So the last one I'm going to bring up is something that I actually mention quite frequently in some of these webinars, but this is a really good opportunity to spend a little bit more time on it, and that is the contact message. So if you look over here on the far left, right under the company contact card here, you'll see in red, stop work, they're overdue. Okay, it's in red, it's large text, but if I go to a different contact, there's nothing there. Okay, so this message can be created very, very easily by And we're going to circle back around to the very beginning of the webinar here by right-clicking anywhere in this box, except for maybe the email address. But click just about anywhere else, and what it'll do is give you an option to add a contact message. So the most obvious thing that you'd want to put here is something that is very client-specific that you want to draw attention to for anybody that may come looking at this contact in the future. Stop work, need updated credit card info. All right, client prefers paper over email, whatever it may be. This is a very quick, easy, kind of simple way to get that message across. Now, obviously, we won't want to put anything too serious or important in here when it comes to workflow or that kind of stuff. This is really just a quick little, hey, pay attention, and you can have an item of detail in here to help keep everybody on track. But here's a little trick that I think comes out pretty handy, is that you don't have to only make one sentence. You can actually kind of hide things in here, and here's one example. I may want to have quick reference to all of my client passwords. Okay, there's an argument to say that we could put that in the notes area or someplace else, but what I could do is I could just go ahead and put logins and passwords. Now, if I save it as is and I just exit this, then yes, we'll see that now appear right down here. But I can keep adding things in here. So I can go ahead and put a space and put QB login, type that. I could do the password for it. Nobody should ever use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password, etc., etc., etc. So I can keep adding to this list and have kind of a hidden list of all of my clients' logins and passwords. So when I close out of this, all we're going to see is logins and passwords as a description, but when I open up that contact message, all those details are kind of hidden in there. I know that sounds a little silly to hide that stuff in a obscure kind of menu over here in the corner, but the reality is it gives you 1 or 2 click access regardless of what screen you're on. Again, there's an argument to be made that that information should go under notes, and I'm not going to dispute that, but you have to come over to the notes tab in order to do that. If you put that information under the contact card or any other information that you feel is pertinent, then that'll give you full-time access to that whenever you have that contact selected. For example, I could be over in the billing tab, realize that something doesn't look right about my totals, and now I need to log into this client's QuickBooks file real quick. So instead of having to now navigate to a different tab, I simply come into here, okay, I get my login for it, I go ahead and reconcile those numbers, and I'm good to go. I don't leave where I originally was. So that can be passwords, logins, it can be whatever you feel is appropriate. But I wanted to kind of show everybody a little trick there about how to kind of hide some stuff under the pillow, so to speak. Okay, so that is all the tips and tricks that we're going to cover today. So I want to leave the last, I guess, 8 minutes or so that we have here to questions. And hopefully there's some question there. Again, I'll do my best to get to all of them in the time that we have. And if I don't get to them, then obviously I'm going to come back and try to address these after the webinar. Okay. So someone's asking, Marianne here is asking a question about assignments. She says that she has assignments set up with work codes. Okay, so what she's done is put a default work code on an assignment. When they start a timer from the assignments at the bottom, the work code does not fill in automatically on the timer. So Marianne, that could definitely be the case, but it depends on what the item is that's coming in on the bottom. If there is an assignment that has a default work code and it's right-clicked on, for example, if I right-click on this assignment for this 1040 down here on the bottom, and I go ahead and start that timer, notice that that work code is populated. If that's not happening and you do have a default set up for that particular assignment, you might want to actually contact us. There could be something else going on, but declare the whole thing up. When it comes to default work codes, the system is always going to look for the assignment first. If there's no work code for the assignment, it's going to look at the project. If there's no work code for the project, it's going to look for the staff default work code. And if nothing is there, then it's not going to use any work codes. You'll have to select it. But if that's happening, if that's the case, Marianne, please let us know and we can look into that. Lalani, hi Lalani, how you doing? Actually says that the file name feature is awesome. I do completely agree. So let's keep going here. Some good questions. I'm trying to keep these short if I can. So Marianne, again, good question. Marianne asked about emails for clients automatically imported into Microsoft Outlook, or I'm sorry, imported into OfficeTools from Outlook. Yes, Emails can be imported into OfficeTools from Outlook automatically, but that requires the Outlook sync. So that is an add-on. If you've purchased it, then we can help you set that up. If you have not, then you can contact your sales rep. We'll be more than happy to get that going for you. And with that utility, yes, as emails come in from a certain client, it will automatically be added to document management under that client. Okay. Okay, so there are more questions about the shortcuts, and really when it comes to shortcuts, all we're doing is we're leveraging, notice my timer's still going here for a minute. Whenever we're talking about shortcuts in document management, it's just a Windows shortcut. So if it's a file, and I'll kind of do a quick demonstration here real quick. Let me move OfficeTools out of the way. So for example, if I wanted to make a shortcut to Chrome, to my internet browser, I would just, and this could be on your desktop, this could be in a Windows folder structure. If you don't know where the application's executable is, then you could do a Google search or dig around your system to find it. Every program's obviously different, but once you do find that file or that executable, just right-click on it, create shortcut, and then what you can do is go ahead and pull that shortcut in to OfficeTools. All right, I'll go ahead and just say OK to that, and boom, there we go. So now whenever I click on that shortcut, it's going to go ahead and open up the application, the folder, or the file that it's linked from. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. It's just a Windows shortcut, and all we're doing is going to import the shortcut. Let's see here. As far as the shortcut saying valid, as long as the file or the folder and all that isn't changing the location, then the shortcut will always be valid. But that's a good point. If the location of the folder or something changes, then you're going to have to recreate those shortcuts. There are some questions about default dates for assignments, things of that sort. That's a much larger question, and Nancy Thompson's asking about that. Nancy, if you have a specific scenario, please send us an email to training@officetools.com, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you with a more detailed description than we have time for today. But whenever it comes to projects and assignments, there's a lot of configuration available. We just want to make sure that it's set up correctly for you, because there's a lot of considerations. Someone's asking here, how do we tell if the Outlook sync has been added? The easiest way is to log into OfficeTools.com and go to the store. And if you have access from there, you'll actually be able to see what products have been purchased. If it's there, you can download it, and there's an install guide to help you install it and set it up. You can always give us a call, and we'll help you out figuring that out. If it is installed, what you're actually going to see is down in the bottom right corner of your screen in the taskbar where the date and time are, you'll see a little yellow arrow down there which represents the sync tool. So if it's running or if it's installed on your computer, you'll actually see it down here in the bottom right corner of your screen. In either case, if you're not sure, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Okay. Got some good questions here. I know I'm going quick. I'm trying to get to all of them as best I can. Is there a way to complete several projects all at the same time? Okay, so this is a bigger question, but I think I can cover it in the last couple minutes that we have here. When it comes to projects, there is a way to do a lot of things at the same time. So what you're going to want to do is navigate to the Projects tab. There's a Manage button located right up here on the toolbar. Now, typically this is turned off from a rights point of view. So if you click on it, it says that you're not allowed to use it. Then talk to whoever your administrator is, and they can turn that back on for you in the user rights. But when I click on Manage, what it's going to do is pull up and show me every single project inside of OfficeTools for every client. Now, in this example, I have a lot of projects. In fact, I have 100 projects, which by your guys' standards actually probably isn't that much. But to make sense of this, what I want to start doing is actually using the tool in the bottom left corner of the screen under Filters. So the question was, how do I complete a lot of projects at once? Well, this is going to be your best bet, because what you can do is you can filter down this list to the projects that you want to complete. All right, so let's just say, for example, I want to go ahead and complete all the 1040s that I finished up. I would argue that you should be checking them off on your activity list or on the project screen, but if you're playing catch up, that's okay too. You can come in here, you can go ahead and choose the description of the project that you want to look at, filter that list down in the background, and there we go. Now those are all of our 1040 projects. If you want to be more specific, obviously you have other tools available, but here's something else that's really cool about this, is that you can go through and you can go ahead and change the due date. All right, so I'm going to clear these filters and show you what I mean. Close out of this guy. So over on the right, I can select, using the checkboxes, various projects, And then down on the bottom, I have some tools to then apply various things to those selected projects. I can delete them in bulk, I can complete them, right? Or I can use the change button down here to make a lot of different modifications to them. One particular one that I like is move to first extension. So as various times of the year come and go, you can come in here very quickly, do a couple filters, select all the projects that you want to move to October or September, or whatever it may be, and then move those to that first extension all in one pass. Or update the project managers, or change the due dates, or mark them complete. So a lot of power in here, but this is, I'm going to quote Spider-Man here real quick. With great power comes great responsibility. So be very, very cognizant of what you're doing in here, because while it's very powerful and allows you to change a lot of things very quickly, it does allow you to change a lot of things very quickly. And there is no back button. So if I come in here and I make a lot of change to a lot of projects, I better be really sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons. Otherwise, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. Okay, that's the end of the Free Training Friday, the Tips and Tricks webinar with Office Tools. I can't thank you all enough for joining me. If you have more questions, or I didn't get to your questions, now's a good time to get those in the last moment, and we will follow up and get back to those. And please visit abacusnext.com/webinars and check out any other webinars that are coming up in the future. And if you have any questions at all, if there's anything that we can help you out with, please contact us. You can do so by going to training@officetools.com, or simply give us a call. Okay? Thank you all again very, very much.
Thank you, Philip. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and I hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.